When Paul Walker died in a tragic car accident in 2013, fans around the world were heartbroken. To millions, he was best known as Brian O'Connor from the Fast and the Furious movies, a cool, fearless street racer with a heart of gold. But behind the fame and movie stardom, Paul was someone much more personal. He was a father, a friend, and a man who had a deep passion for cars that went far beyond his roles on screen. What many people didn't know was that Paul had been quietly building one of the most impressive private car collections in the world. It wasn't for show, and it wasn't something he shared on social media. It was his own quiet passion, kept hidden in a garage very few had ever seen. After his passing, when the garage was finally opened, what people discovered wasn't just a group of expensive cars, it was a living memory of Paul himself, filled with handwritten notes, unfinished projects, and even plans to help others. Paul Walker didn't collect cars the way celebrities usually do. There were no flashy photos, no online videos of his garage, and no public car tours. His passion for automobiles was something deeply personal. He didn't just buy cars, he worked on them. He studied them, tuned them, and made notes about how they performed. Some cars were torn apart and half rebuilt. Others were lined up neatly, kept under covers and locked away. Paul's garage was more like a workshop and a museum than a luxury display. It was filled with over 30 rare and powerful cars, including models that were almost impossible to find, and some that weren't even legal to drive on U.S. roads. These weren't status symbols, they were projects, companions, and in many ways, parts of his soul. His family and close friends were stunned. Each car told a story, and together, they painted a picture of a man who loved building things just as much as he loved speed. Among the treasures in Paul's garage were some of the most iconic performance cars ever made. He had 5 1995 BMW M3 lightweights, cars that were basically built for the racetrack. He also owned a Saleen S7, a rare American hypercar known for its blazing speed. Parked alongside them were Ford GTs, Porsche 911s, and a beautiful Toyota Super Turbo, an obvious tribute to his fast and furious roots. But what truly amazed fans and experts alike was his collection of Nissan Skyline GT-RS, especially the R32 and R34 models. These Japanese cars are beloved by car lovers all over the world, but they're hard to find in America due to strict import laws. Paul didn't just collect these cars, he customized them himself, tuning the engines, adjusting suspensions, and even writing down his own observations in notebooks. Some of the Skylines were rumored to be used in the Fast and Furious films, including one R34 kept in private storage. It was clear Paul had a deep love for these cars, not as toys, but as works of art and engineering. As Paul's family and legal team began to sort through his belongings, they ran into a surprising problem. Many of the cars weren't registered under Paul's name at all. Instead, they were linked to a company called Always Evolving, a racing and tuning business Paul had started with his friend Roger Rodas, who also died in the same crash. Always Evolving worked on high-end cars and competed in races, but it also acted as a kind of holding company. The cars were technically owned by the company, which made it difficult to figure out which vehicles belonged to Paul personally and which were considered business assets. Some titles were incomplete, others were still being financed or prepared for sale. A few were even meant for charity auctions through Paul's nonprofit, Reach Out Worldwide. This created legal complications, with some people filing lawsuits and others trying to claim parts of the collection. What started as a simple garage turned into a legal puzzle, one that blurred the lines between personal passion and business investment. One of the more surprising parts of Paul's collection was how he managed to bring in rare Japanese domestic market, JDM, cars that were not approved for U.S. roads. In particular, several of his Nissan Skylines were brought in under the show and display law, which allows certain special cars to be imported for display purposes, but not for everyday driving. These laws are strict, and the cars can't be insured or registered like regular vehicles. Paul worked with importers and legal teams to bring these cars in, sometimes taking personal financial risks to make it happen. It's said that he even helped fund the effort to get an R34 Skyline cleared through U.S. Customs, paving the way for other car lovers to do the same. To Paul, it wasn't about showing off, it was about owning the cars in their purest form, just as they were made in Japan. He didn't care about breaking the rules if it meant preserving the integrity of the car. These weren't just cars to him. They were symbols of a deeper love for performance and precision. Perhaps the most touching part of Paul Walker's garage wasn't the rare engines or expensive builds. It was the little things, the notes he left behind. Inside glove boxes, center consoles, and even taped the dashboards were handwritten messages. Some were technical, listing things like tire pressure or engine tuning details. Others were deeply personal. In one note found inside a Skyline, Paul wrote about how driving the car made him feels like flying. Smooth. Angry. Alive. Another note inside a BMW M3 simply said, "Might be the cleanest one left. Don't ever flip it." These notes weren't left for the public. They were reminders to himself, raw, honest, and full of emotion. The most heart-wrenching message was found in a GTR, written on a sticky note in blue ink. "This one's for Meadow. She'll drive it one day." That one line spoke louder than any interview or tribute. It showed Paul's love for his daughter and his hope that she would one day share in his passion. These small scraps of paper gave us a window into Paul's heart and soul, revealing the man behind the movies. Not every car in Paul Walker's garage was a finished masterpiece. In fact, several of them were half-built, stripped down, or under repair. Some had masking tape with handwritten checklists stuck to the dash. Others had wires hanging loose and tools still sitting beside them. One was a classic Datsun 240Z that Paul was rumored to be rebuilding as his next daily driver. Another was an old American muscle car that he was fixing up for a friend. These weren't cars bought for profit, they were personal projects. They showed that Paul wasn't just a movie star who liked cars. He was a true gearhead who got his hands dirty. His friends said he could spend hours in the garage, deep in thought, adjusting engines or debating the best exhaust setup. These unfinished builds were more than just metal and bolts, they were the future he never got to finish. For those who loved him, walking through the garage felt like walking through his unfinished dreams. One final discovery in Paul Walker's garage left everyone stunned and inspired. Several of the cars had sticky notes on the dashboards with the letters ROWW or the words charity auction written on them. These notes were not written by fans or his team, they were written by Paul himself. It turned out that he had planned to auction off some of his prized cars to raise money for Reach Out Worldwide, the charity he founded to help victims of natural disasters. Among the cars marked for charity was a custom Toyota Supra and a classic Boss 302 Mustang. These cars weren't just valuable, they were meaningful. Paul had been quietly planning to use his car collection to give back to the world. He didn't do it for attention or praise. He was preparing for future events that never happened. It was clear that Paul saw his garage not just as a collection of vehicles, but as a way to make a difference. Even in death, his legacy of kindness, passion, and purpose continued to drive forward, one car at a time. The people closest to Paul Walker didn't just remember him for his roles in Hollywood or the cars he drove, they remembered the man behind the fame. After his death, stepping into that garage was like opening a time capsule of Paul's heart. His brothers, Cody and Caleb, were among those who helped organize his estate and walk through the garage. What they found wasn't just overwhelming, it was emotional. Each tool on the workbench, each greasy rag, every unfinished car felt like a part of Paul still lingered there. Friends spoke of how Paul would stay up late in the garage, smiling like a kid as he worked on new parts or reviewed performance specs. One close friend recalled a night when Paul spent hours tuning a car only to take it out for a short, quiet drive and return with a grin that said everything. This wasn't about showing off. It was about the feeling, the connection between man and machine. The garage didn't just tell the story of a movie star. It told the story of a father who loved his daughter, a friend who valued loyalty, and a man who never lost sight of who he was, no matter how famous he became. The discoveries inside those walls brought tears, laughter, and long moments of silence. They reminded everyone that Paul's true legacy wasn't in blockbuster hits or fast cars. It was in the kindness he showed, the passion he carried, and the lives he quietly touched. Paul Walker's impact didn't end with his passing, it only grew stronger in the years that followed. Car lovers around the world continue to honor his legacy through tribute builds, charity drives, and special car meets. Fans have restored cars like the ones he owned, added decals honoring his favorite quotes, and even organized memorial cruises in his name. His daughter, Meta Walker, has also stepped into the spotlight, not for racing, but for continuing the humanitarian work Paul started. Through Reach Out Worldwide, she has helped support global disaster relief efforts and kept the spirit of giving alive. Paul's name remains deeply respected within the car community, not just because of the Fast and Furious films, but because of his genuine love for the craft. He was one of them, a car guy who understood what it meant to care more about engine response than red carpet glamour. The stories of his kindness continue to surface, how he once bought an engagement ring for a military couple he met in a jewelry store, or how he secretly helped fund medical bills for children in need. These acts weren't broadcasted. They were quiet, sincere, and often anonymous, just like the man himself. Paul Walker didn't need the spotlight to make an impact. His actions, his passion, and his humility continue to inspire a generation of enthusiasts and humanitarians alike. That garage, once a hidden retreat, now serves as a symbol of what it means to live with purpose and heart. Years may have passed since Paul Walker's untimely death, but the story of his garage still captures the imagination of fans around the world. Why? Because it represents something rare in today's celebrity culture: authenticity. In a world filled with curated social media posts and carefully planned publicity stunts, Paul's garage was raw and real. It wasn't built to impress anyone. It wasn't documented for views or followers. It was a quiet space where a passionate man could be himself. The discovery of his handwritten notes, secret plans, and carefully preserved cars pulled back the curtain on a person the public rarely saw. It reminded people that fame doesn't always change who you are, and that true passion doesn't need a stage. The fact that Paul used his love for cars not just to fuel his own interests but to help others made this story even more powerful. He didn't just dream, he acted. His plans to auction off rare cars for charity, his legal efforts to help import forbidden vehicles for fellow enthusiasts, and his hands-on builds all showed a man driven by purpose. For fans, his garage became a final gift, a glimpse into the mind and heart of someone they admired. And for the world, it became a lesson: legacies aren't built in front of cameras. They're built in late-night garage sessions, in acts of kindness that go unnoticed, and in passions pursued quietly but fully. That's why Paul Walker's garage still matters. Because inside those walls, the truth lived. And that truth continues to inspire millions. Paul Walker wasn't just an actor playing a gearhead, he was the real thing. On screen, fans knew him as Brian O'Connor, the undercover cop who could handle any car, any challenge, and any risk with heart and humility. But off-screen, Paul was even more grounded. He often said in interviews that his favorite part of filming the Fast and the Furious series wasn't the fame, it was the driving. He loved learning stunt techniques, doing his own driving scenes, and bonding with the car culture the franchise celebrated. What people saw on screen wasn't just performance, it was Paul being Paul. His castmates spoke of how he would talk endlessly about rare engines, how he would disappear into the garage between takes, and how he treated everyone from mechanics to movie producers with the same level of respect. That's part of why his garage discovery struck such a deep chord. It confirmed what his friends, family, and fans already suspected, that Paul Walker didn't wear a mask for fame. He lived his life authentically, both in front of the camera and behind closed garage doors. His love for speed wasn't reckless, it was reverent. His connection to cars wasn't about money, it was about meaning. Each restored engine, each scribbled tuning note, and each car tagged for charity showed that he wasn't collecting for ego. He was curating a life of passion, precision, and purpose. There are many ways to remember a person, but the most lasting legacies are often built quietly, without expecting recognition. Paul Walker's garage may have been locked away during his lifetime, but its contents have become one of the most powerful reflections of who he truly was. Beyond the rare paint jobs, custom mods, and six-figure values, The real treasures were the handwritten notes, the half-built dreams, and the quiet gestures of giving. Paul wasn't chasing headlines. He was creating a legacy of depth and devotion, something that would speak for him when he could no longer speak for himself. That garage is now more than a storage space. It's a reminder that passion, when lived authentically, becomes timeless. It's a place that reminds fans that real heroes don't need capes, they need conviction. Paul's story continues to touch hearts not because of what he had, but because of how he gave, how he loved, and how he stayed true to himself until the very end. And for those who now walk through that garage, or see pictures of the car